How do we cope in Dorset with spreading the arts out away from the obvious urban centres?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think that one of the obvious ways we cope with that is through organisations like Arts Reach, which are prime examples of working across predominantly rural areas with high quality work that brings that high quality art directly into the heart of communities. And as you probably know, Arts Reach has been going for many years and was one of the original rural touring scheme organisations. And I think that work in particular is valued by many villages and communities across Dorset, and deservedly so, because it delivers what people want. It delivers high quality and in essence sometimes quite challenging work that people can see on their own doorstep. So that's good, and all credit to them, they continue to be funded by Arts Council. So that's good.
What do you see as the next sort of load of challenges to confront?
I think that the future, well, let's face it, the future of local authority funding is still uncertain, and we mustn't let the current round of Arts Council successes lead us to think that this is the end of the process. This is actually the beginning of the process. We have, the County Council has cut a substantial amount of its budget in the year that's just begun. It will need to cut more in the succeeding 2 years. So we can't actually sit here and be complacent about the fact that now it's all over, because it isn't, and the future of local authority funding is still in question. I don't know how that will go in Dorset. We also have to face the fact that the Arts Council itself will be cutting more funding in 2012-13. It's been asked to cut its administration budget, whatever that is, by 50% in that year. So there are still difficulties to be got over, and the future, I think, will be dictated by how much we can continue to work together as organisations, because we will need to do that. And it may be that local authority support and investment disappears. I don't know. But if it does, we need to be ready for that, and we need to find out a way of how the considerable success of what we've been doing so far is, goes on being achieved, whether local authorities are there or not. And that's a challenge. And the answer to that very definitely lies in the collaborative work, almost certainly.
In America, most of the arts are mainly sponsored by private individuals or corporations. Why does this never happen in this country?
Well, it's a mixture, isn't it? It's a mixture of the fact that you haven't got the tax break that Americans have, and it's nowhere near that. And philanthropy in this country has tended to be around people supporting what they want to support, and I think the economy for the arts has always relied on that mixture of philanthropy and public support, public sector support.
Do you think there's not much chance of the private sector stepping in to shore up the funding?
Well, if you talk to philanthropists, they will say almost certainly that they are not going to shore up funding. That's not what they're interested in. They are not going to fill gaps left by Arts Council reductions in funding or local authority reductions in funding. So, and you can, that applies from Vivian Duffield down. They have categorically said that they will not do that, and that's not what they're interested in. So I think that it is unlikely that the arts will ever be funded in quite the way that the American system seems to have achieved. But you have, in America, you have the tax breaks, and you have some enormous trust funds, and a lot of organisations like the Met in New York have huge endowment funds, and endowment funds in this country, for instance, are virtually non-existent. There's about a couple of organisations who are working on endowments and gifts from philanthropists. But both of those organisations, as far as I know, have intense personal involvement from the people with the money. So it's, and it's that intense personal involvement which we haven't got yet. And I think, given the plurality of arts organisations in the country, I think it's unlikely we would achieve that, quite honestly.
And what's the situation with some of the organisations in Dorset who've lost their Arts Council revenue funding?
Well, I think that what we mustn't do is assume that they will disappear, because I don't think they will. I mean, arts organisations are creative, they're flexible, they tend to rebuild from the bottom if things have got a bit desperate. I think that we haven't really sorted out yet what. There are very few who've actually lost money in Dorset. There are organisations who applied and didn't get it, but I think that there will be opportunities for those organisations to go on to a more perhaps project-based series of funding applications. I don't know. I mean, which actually they may benefit from that. Because that project-based funding tends to be more light touch than Arts Council funding. So, in terms, if you're a small organisation with, just one or two or 1.5 people, it's sometimes better to be on project funding. I know it's more scary, but it sometimes means that you spend less time making applications, filling in boxes, filling in forms, doing your evaluation and your monitoring, all that sort of stuff. So I don't think we're going to lose those organisations or those individuals. I hope not, because they're valuable.
Because their funding doesn't end now, does it?
It doesn't end now. No. I mean, that's the thing that we have to. The Arts Council decisions have been made to take effect from April 2012 onwards. So actually, the current situation is that all the organisations that were funded are still funded and will be for another year. So they have a whole year in which to plan some sort of, if you like, exit strategy or some sort of development planning which will allow them to continue after April 2012. So this is not doomsday by a long shot. So we mustn't write them off.